I think it's time to talk about crossbows. Over the last week or so, we've seen a lot of bow builds absolutely dominate. Lightning arrow, gas arrow. Meanwhile, stuff like crossbow builds have been mostly relegated to grenade type builds, and that has kind of been the takeaway for a lot of people I trust that have kind of told me, yeah, grenades good, crossbow shots kind of mid. But after experimenting around a little bit, I think I solved a lot of the issues that this build had, and I'm now super happy with what we have. Now let's first start right here with our two main skills, explosive shot and shockburst rounds. When I first did research and looked at people's builds, the stuff that I really liked was both explosive shot and shockburst rounds, but both were separate builds. One had to do some weird stuff for single target because explosive shot is just not that good at single target, and the shockburst round builds had galvanic shards, which I really didn't like that much for clear. At least it wasn't as good as explosive shot, not even in the same realm. So let's just go over them real quick. This right here is explosive shot. The audio, everything is just phenomenal. The clear speed, being able to, like, if you're on WSD, the responsiveness, you can just shoot anywhere, easily aim while walking. It is, I mean, it's just incredible. I don't know, I've not felt anything like this in PoE2 so far, but maybe that's just me. Okay, so this skill has a lot of damage, and it basically has a projectile part and a explosion part, and both can shotgun. So you have a projectile, right now we have 4 projectiles with scatter shot and everything, and the additional projectile from Deadeye. And all of these can overlap on the same target. It has a slow attack speed, so the DPS against bosses is not that great. It's not bad, but nothing to write home about. But the explosion here also, and it has more conversion. It has a big AoE, so that's what you're seeing right here. You're seeing a projectile colliding with the ground or an enemy. Now here's where it got tricky though. I love this skill, but the single target was, I mean, not up to par, so I got into shockburst rounds. Now shockburst rounds is a ridiculously strong skill. It is basically made for single target. Basically it has a projectile part and a pulse part. The pulse part is the big AoE you see going off of it. These attack damage numbers might not seem like much, but they add up to quite a bit because this skill has 450% of base attack speed. It is basically a absolute Gatling gun. Look at this, right? You just, and every shot has 2 projectiles because we're Deadeye. So even the reload is really easy. We're just absolutely annihilating single targets. But it has a huge downside because this pulse only happens if the enemy is shocked, right? The thing, the icon up in the corner that signals that the enemy is shocked. If it doesn't, you do not get this part. You only get this measly little part right here, which does almost no damage. It is a joke, right? So you have to shock. There is no ifs or buts. You have to shock. And if you shock, this pulse part also has 100% conversion, which is extremely strong for scaling. So we have a good clear skill, a good single target skill. How do we combine them with the 3 dragon solid mask? So this unique helmet has really good all res, which is quite strong. You can wear it at level 45. So theoretically, you can start playing this build at 45. And it has 3 very interesting lines. So fire damage from hits contributes to shock chance, but you cannot ignite anymore. What this means is now your explosive shot can actually shock, which is ridiculous, obviously, because now explosive shot feeds into shockburst rounds. So I walk up to the boss, and the first thing I'm thinking about is how can I shock the boss? Well, for the 3 dragons version, it's pretty easy. You shoot 1 to 3 times, depending on how bad your gear is. If your gear is really bad, you might have to attack a few times, but we also have supports that give you 100% more chance to shock and stuff like that. More on that in a bit. But so I go in, boom, and the first shot will immediately shock, right? So what do I do now? I swap to Stormburst rounds. It's a 1-click because basically you have your auto attack that gets swapped to explosive shot, and then the other rounds, it's basically just having different munition. So 1-click, and you're back to absolutely screwing around, right? And there is your single target damage. And as you can see right here, that shock lasted quite a while. I have a little bit of shock duration on my jewels and a little bit on the passive tree, so it just makes it very smooth. Now, if you watch closely, you will also have noticed something else. The boss actually got frozen here. What the hell is going on? Well, turns out the reason Free Dragons is so good is not just because of the shock. It's also because lightning damage from hits contributes to freeze buildup instead of shock chance. Now, here's the thing. Shock burst rounds, intrinsically, it doesn't say it here, but it cannot shock and it cannot electrocute, which is a big downside. So we need to find a secondary skill. However, it can apply any other ailment. So we're basically losing the shock, which it cannot do anyways, but we're gaining freeze. So now on top of that, we're also freezing enemies. Now, it gets Even more interesting though, because lightning damage contributing to freeze also means that your Herald of Thunder now freezes, which now activates Herald of Ice, and that is part of the explosions you've seen in the intro video. Now, important here, I made a max roll planner about this. I will also follow this up with a full max roll guide in the next coming days, just so you know, including leveling and everything. But for now, just the bare bones, I wanted to basically give you an outline. So the passive tree is here, all the gem setups are here, the most important stuff that I'm also going to talk about in the videos here, and just a write down in case you forget stuff and you don't want to rewatch the video. Once the guide is out, I'll make an update video, so you can sub if you want to. Now, explosive shot. First up, let's talk about the gems. Explosive shot with scatter shot. This shotguns, so that means that multiple of these explosions all overlap. As you can see right here with explosive shot, there's like multiple projectiles. It's a little bit hard to see, but it gets fired in sequence, but it doesn't take anything away from your attack speed. It is just an absolute Gatling gun. We have 4 projectiles right now, and we get 4 overlapping AoEs, which is ridiculous. Then we have conduction. This one's actually interesting because I usually wouldn't put that on, but it gives you 100% more chance to shock if you have absolutely insane gear, and maybe I will even replace this. I'm not 100% sure. You can replace this, but for most people, I think this is very safe because you don't want to like have to attack 5 times or something to shock the enemy. That's all damage that is taken away from your Shockburst rounds. But if you have having trouble clear, another damage support here would be pretty strong. For example, +1 level to fire skills, or if you get fire penetration. On top of that, we have martial tempo. Now, this one is really important, and I want you to listen. A lot of people do not know this. Attack speed contributes to reload speed. So a lot of people say, Pal, why do you go Ranger? Why do you stack so much attack speed, right? You see a lot of crossbow builds out there that forego attack speed because what happens is you attack and then you have to reload. So why would you attack faster? You're just hitting your reload more often. That is not true, because attack speed also makes the reload time faster. So for example, you can see right here, 0.31 second reload time. I unequip martial tempo, it goes to 0.38. This is a more multiplier to both your attack speed and your reload speed. But the same goes for increases from the passive tree, which we're going to talk about later. At the end here, Fire Infusion, just a very good multiplier. If you have a 4 link, you can decide, do you want to shock more? Do you want to cut Fire Infusion? Whatever you want. Shockburst rounds, this one right here is basically all about single target. So it doesn't matter if you reduce its area, you just want more damage. So concentrated effect, perfect. Primal armament, 25% more weapon LE damage. Now you can also put this here, but explosive shot doesn't have as good of a conversion as Shockburst rounds has, so I didn't really do that. Lightning infusion, more damage. And then at the end, heft. This actually does work, funnily enough. It does convert, but it gives you more maximum physical damage, so the spread of your damage is better, which is quite strong because we are using Lightning Rod right here, which makes your hits lucky. So the higher your damage goes, the more chance you have to get lucky, because what lucky does is it rolls your damage twice. Let's say, for example, you hit once, it's a damage range between 200 and 1000. It hits 400, and then the second time 700. The game takes the higher number, and that's your damage. Other than that, we have Herald of Ash, Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ice, Wind Dancer, and Overwhelming Presence. These are all passive buffs. If you don't know, you have to right-click up here to activate them. And I currently have 150 Spirit, and that is because of my amulet right here. I have plus 50 to Spirit. Coming out of the campaign, you get 100, so you can get it either from body armor or from amulet or in a mixture of those. So if you had to cut one, most likely cut Overwhelming Presence. What this does is it reduces elemental ailment threshold. Basically just means more chance to shock. Once again, very good. Wind Dancer is an incredible defensive tool. So if you're happy with like the way you are in terms of defensiveness, you can cut it, but it is very, very strong, especially for mobs that are jumping at you. And then we have the triple heralds. Now, there's a few reasons why the heralds are strong. For clear speed, right? Herald of Thunder gives you these lightning bolts that rain down whenever you kill a shocked enemy, which is all the time. Herald of Ice, which the enemies get shattered by Herald of Thunder because it can now freeze. These shattered enemies explode with Herald of Ice. Very strong. And then Herald of Ash is just another explosion on top of everything else for overkill damage. Now, I have heard rumors that these actually don't work together and they kind of like block each other. I'm not 100% sure. I will do some more testing on that, or maybe you can do some testing on that as well. In terms of supports for Herald of Ash, I just put +1 fire skills here, but there's not really much that scales it because you can't just put increased damage here because it already scales off of your initial damage. Confusing, doesn't matter. There's not too much here. I will definitely update this in the future. On Herald of Thunder, very, very important. Ice Bite, whenever you kill a frozen enemy, 35% global damage for 3 seconds. Very strong. Innervate, I have those buffs up all the time. Killing a shocked enemy, buff again. And then Glaciation makes it so you have easier freezes, which makes Herald of Ice a lot more consistent, so that your Herald of Thunder freezes more. On Herald of Ice, I have Cold Mastery, just +1, more damage. As you can see right here, these are all attack-based, so they all scale off of your weapon now. Then I have Cold Infusion, more damage, and Magnified Effect for wider AoE explosions. It's ridiculous how good this is. I would probably actually put AoE here and make it so you always have AoE in, but yeah, if you have a 3-link, just in case. For Wind Dancer, I just put on Blind. Honestly, if an enemy hits me, it's probably not going to hit me again, whatever. I just wanted to put Blind on because I didn't have the points for Sand in the Eyes, and I'm not sure I will have in the future. So it's nice to have, but I'll probably arrange these around. And for Overwhelming Presence, I don't really know what to do. Now, I haven't really thought about what else to put here. It's probably going to be Emergency Reload. It's probably going to be a Curse. That's all going to be for the actual build guide. For the big build guide, get creative for now. Now, I want to knock off the Ascendancy right here because I'm a Deadeye. I'm not a mercenary. And there's a lot of misconceptions. Once I'm going to say this again. I said it in the gems. Action speed and attack speed in general does scale your reload speed. So Deadeye is a lot better than you give it credit for on a lot of these crossbow skills. Once again, the idea of people that you don't want to scale attack speed, if you think about it, it makes sense, right? You attack twice and then you have to reload. So why would you want to attack faster so you hit your reload over and over? But that is not true because attack speed does scale your reload time as well. So it double dips in that sense, right? So it's just incredible. It is very, very strong on Deadeye, and Deadeye is currently probably the best Ascendancy or among the top 3. And Mercenary just doesn't have that much to offer. Now, you can go Witch Hunter if you want to. You can get Call, Decimating Stride, Explodey. For me personally, Explodey was overkill. As you saw, it's just the Heralds are just exploding everything everywhere. So why would I need it? I'd rather just have Tailwind, movement speed. It gives me 10% movement speed, 30% attack speed, 150 evasion rating. It is wild how good Tailwind is. Then I have Point Blank, which you can choose around. You can go Point Blank or Far Shot. I usually go Point Blank. If you want to go Far Shot and because you're having trouble with bosses, you can do that as well. Usually against packs, they will jump on you, so Point Blank is better. And then Endless Munition is your third lap, but honestly, I would really try to get strong enough to do your third lap and just push through. This +1 projectile is insane. However, there's one thing to note here. The +1 projectile is not doubling your damage for Shockburst rounds, okay? Just so you understand. That is not what it does. So it doesn't take 2 magazines, it doesn't shoot twice, and you're at the same attack speed. What the game basically does is it slows you down. So it makes these attacks slower, but every single shot fires 2. Every single shot fires 2. So every magazine consumed actually shoots 2, but it also makes you slower to compensate because otherwise it would literally just double your damage. That is not what it does. From my personal testing, this is around about 30% more damage for your Shockburst rounds, but do also remember that you have to also reload less, so that's also kind of good. But I would say around about 30% more damage. And for Explosive Shot, it's around about 33% more damage. Not even talking about the extra AoE you get from it. Another thing I wanted to say, because we're on the topic of Deadeye and maybe chaining, piercing, you might be thinking about forking, all of that stuff. It doesn't really work with Explosive Shot because it's kind of ground targeted. So if you look at this, you can hit with the projectile on an enemy and then it will fork out. The problem is the explosion only happens at the last enemy. So if we think about how that would look like, right? We could say the enemy is here. I shoot out. Now, against a single target, all the explosions are going to accumulate here and are going to hit. But if you have, for example, Fork or Pierce, they will just pierce through. And the boss will just not take damage from the AoE. The AoE will happen somewhere back there whenever it hits a wall or whatever. So that is basically just to say it's not very good. You don't need it for clear. It's just overkill and it also doesn't work. Now, next up, let's go over gearing. We have to start at the crossbow here. The way you have to think about this build is it has Explosive Shot, which is fire, and Stormburst rounds, which is lightning. They both have their conversion. So if you scale mostly physical damage, the elements will align, right? Because you have the conversion, right? You just go pure physical on your crossbow. You will have the conversion to fire when you need it on Explosive Shot, and you have the conversion when you need it to lightning on Shockburst rounds. If you go for stuff like cold, fire, now the scaling gets awkward. So that means physical damage is king. It's basically adaptive damage on this build. Now, how do you get physical damage? The first roll up top, percentage physical. There's also a hybrid mod. I have both right here. And then in the up top, you can see I have quality. So you can get up to 20% quality, which gives you another more multiplier to your weapon. And they come from blacksmith whetstones right here. These are pretty damn cheap. You can buy them from Alva here. If you're in trade, obviously, you can buy them for, I think, like 9 or 10 to 1. And they will give you a huge damage boost. Now, if you have... This is not a perfect weapon. It's not even close to perfect. It's like just something I picked up. If you have a random lightning damage roll, fire damage roll, cold damage roll, don't get me wrong, it's not bad. It's just not your first priority. If you have it on, it's still a boost, right? Elemental damage with attacks is also fine. Now, in the suffix, the two things you want is first, attack speed's very strong, but I would say the most quality of life here is loads an additional bolt. Explosive shot per default only loads 1 bolt, but I can basically hit twice. I can just hit twice and then it reloads, which makes it a lot more efficient. That is a very nice mod. It is quite expensive to get physical damage and that mod. So yeah, if you had to decide, more physical damage, way more important. Also do note that the additional bolt doesn't really do anything for Shockburst rounds, because Shockburst rounds already has like 17 and I just go to 18. That's a very minor difference. But I cannot emphasize this enough. If you don't have a good weapon, do not respec into this. You cannot start this build at 45 if you have a bad crossbow. If you have your crossbow that is coming up at 55, then respec at 55, right? It is really important. All your damage revolves around it, even more than most other builds. It is super important. There's very little external sources of damage that you have on this build. 3 dragons, I already explained. Might as well get as high elemental resistances on it as possible. At least currently, it's a pretty cheap item. Amulet-wise and body armor-wise, plus 50 spirit if you can get it between the two, it's very, very good. Other than that, this is a terrible amulet. I have nothing here that's really valuable other than the chaos res. Crit sucks. Don't go for crit. All attributes is, yeah, it's plus 6 all attributes. But yeah, this amulet kind of bricked. I tried to buy it. My body armor, I got really lucky on this one. I slammed the tier 10 evasion rating. So I basically just bought one and slammed twice. As much evasion rating as possible. That's all that really matters, because not only is evasion kind of like the theme of Deadeye, you also get 100% increased evasion from equipped body armor. So stronger your body armor, that will get doubled. Then my gloves are the gloves I found in campaign at level 35 or something. They have attack speed, they have life, they're terrible. This will be the next thing I replace. This ring is decent. It has low resistances, int, a little bit of life, bad chaos res. It's good enough for now. Just get your resistances up on rings. There's not much else to do. You can get flat physical damage, which is actually quite good. That is one of the ways you can get external damage. But life is more important. Resistance are more important. If you have the flexibility to get fizz on top, that's huge. If you can get a second charm slot, I didn't really feel like it was worth it. Honestly, I paid way too much for this. Honestly, just go life and resistances. That is the most important thing. Right now, my charms are not really proccing because I don't really get hit, because I have so much evasion. Movement speed is everything on boots. 30% movement speed, nothing else matters before you get that. In this game, movement speed is king. There's nothing else. After that, life and resistances and stats, right? That's it. Flasks, pretty normal. I didn't min-max anything here. I just have poison. I have anti-freeze, but I don't really get hit, like I said. So TLDR, you need 3 dragons. Really good weapon. Slam all your money into your weapon and then kind of make the rest work. Body armor would be maybe the third most important one, because your evasion gets doubled from the passive tree. Now, let's go over the passive tree. For a crossbow build, from the get-go, Ranger is kind of awkward. Where Mercenary has a lot of good early game clusters, for example, this 2-handed cluster right here, followed up by a few other things. You get very close to instant reload right here for the reload speed. You're down here immediately for full salvo, for reusable ammunition. But as a Ranger, you're far out of the way, so you're going to be leveling as a bow build, roundabout whenever you're comfortable. Now, for the passive tree on crossbows, leveling is in the other section, but what matters is evasion, increased damage, and attack speed. That is literally all that matters, and maybe reload speed. Area of effect you get from this cluster, and I think this cluster only. AoE, AoE, AoE. Do note that some of the heralds are also attack-based, so that's also bigger explosions, not just convenience. I guess for some standout points that need explaining, number 1 would be the herald nodes. Coming Calamity. We are triple heralds. This is global damage. Global all elemental damage. Counts for your attacks, counts for your heralds, counts for everything. It's incredible. The notes before as well. This is basically 74% all damage for 3 points. It is ridiculous, right? What else is important? Maiming Strike, very strong. You're maiming enemies, which slows them, right? can hover over here. They have 30% slower movement speed and reduced evasion rating, so it's also easier to hit them. Down here, movement speed, big time. I do not take the movement speed on kill on the left side because I don't think it's worth it right now. But once I have the points for it, I'm probably going to go for it right now. I just want to get tank here because I want to get into red maps. Now, down here, there's some very interesting notes. So once you get here, you will be in these two clusters. Forces of Nature, very strong. It's penetration, but it works for your main skill, that's fire, and also for your single target skill, that's lightning. So it's just all pen. This gives you freeze buildup. It gives you shock buildup. Incredible node right here. This gives you increased chance to shock, damage, penetrates lightning. Now, this is only for your single target, but the pathing here would be a little bit awkward anyways, so it is fine. And this node here is just kind of strong. Lightning Rod is round about 20% more damage. Once again, lucky hits just means that your damage rolls twice. Like, don't have to explain the math right here. It's just very, very good. And just take it, right? Down here, Giant Slayer is incredible. Increased damage, accuracy, chance to inflict ailments, which is going to make it easier to shock bosses. Down here, we have 15% chance for crossbow attacks to not consume a bullet, which feels like really, really good whenever it happens. We have increased damage for each ammunition type. So when you're at the boss and you go fire first and then you reload into your Shockburst, you will actually have 50% increased damage from this. Very, very good. Then we take all the jewels on the way. As for jewels, I would say just go with whatever. Reload speed, anything from LE damage, projectile damage. I guess a tech stat that is quite cheap right now is actually shock duration. You will see me having a few of that. And it makes it so that the shock is not just 4 seconds, but it's actually longer. So that means that the shock won't just go away and now I have to apply the shock again so I can use Shockburst rounds again. It makes it kind of awkward, right? So in terms of duration, you can go for these nodes right here, but I think they're quite inconsistent. As well as that scaling the shock, we have so many angles to increase our damage. It's just not that good. But these nodes might be something I'll take whenever I'm out of damage nodes and out of good evasion nodes eventually. 15% duration you get right here. So yeah, if you can get some shock duration here and increased damage, that is huge. Crossbow, instant reload. I mean, reload speed is just fantastic. I don't know what else to say. There might be an endgame respec where you go down here, but that is for later. Now, another thing that I hear a lot is, should I go acrobatics or not? Basically, what acrobatics does is it increases your evasion by a lot, but now you can also evade AoE hits from, for example, bosses. Personally, I haven't really needed it because nothing really touches me, but I'm sure in endgame with explosions, on death and whatnot, I will probably spec into it. I would say I'm currently working on enhanced reflexes right here. I also have to work on freedom of movement, and then I will also go down here through cat-like agility up to blur for the movement speed and evasion. And once I have all of that finished at level 85 to 90, I will probably go for acrobatics. I would say if you have a good, I don't know, 20,000 evasion with your tailwind stacks up and everything, I'll just quickly activate it. Currently, I have 12,677. Once I get to like maybe 17, 18, 20,000, I will take that keystone. Now, quickly to explain shock, because we need it for our single target skill. Shock has a default duration of 4 seconds. So you apply the shock, you will see this icon right here under the boss bar, and then you know the enemy is shocked, and it will be shocked for 4 seconds. Unless you increase that. We, for example, go for increased shock duration on jewels, which is very efficient. It goes up to 25% per, and then we also get 15% from here. If you really want to, you can also go to rattled and get shock duration that way. I haven't really found the points for that yet, maybe at level 90 or something, but until then, this should do well. Now, I would probably say you should get to around about an 8-second duration. If you get in total like 100%, maybe 60, 70. If you have low shock duration, what will happen is you shock with explosive shot, then you have to swap. You can attack for 4 seconds, and then you have to swap back. But if you make that window longer, your single target gets significantly better. Next up, chance to shock. So just because you're lightning damage doesn't mean you're 100% of the time going to shock. It means that it depends on how much damage you deal. But if you have chance to shock from the tree, for example, from Emboldened Avatar or Flash Storm, now you have more chance, so you can shock with less damage. And then magnitude of shock is 20% per default. That means that when an enemy is shocked, it takes 20% increased damage. Pretty cool. You can also scale this on the passive tree from nodes like, for example, shock effect into frazzled. Personally, doing the math just like roundabout, increased damage is just so strong right now because it's very hard to get in general that scaling the shock didn't really do much for me yet. Maybe I'll do it later. Just so you understand, Shockburst rounds just cares about that the enemy is shocked. How strong the shock is, like, It's not a lightning conduit build where it matters how big the shock is and you have to scale it. No, it's just basically shock them, doesn't matter how big. Now let's talk about leveling real quick. I will have a full max roll guide out in the next coming days. I will link it down in the description here, and I will also make an update video whenever that happens. But in general, the consensus is early game crossbows are a little bit If you have somebody who has a good setup, sure, you can try, but in general, bow skills are incredible early because they just scale from the get-go. Out of the gates, you get lightning arrow plus lightning rod, which are such a crazy combo. You put down lightning rods, you shoot lightning arrows, they just chain around, they absolutely decimate bosses early. It doesn't seem fine-tuned for early. It seems like too much. So if you have a good bow, roundabout, you just upgrade your bows. If you have already exalts from your last character, you can get some leveling gear even, right? Get just flat damage on gear, get really good bows at certain breakpoints, and you're going to dominate. Now, you can do this all the way to 45 or 55 whenever you want to respec into crossbows, because that's going to be whenever your good crossbow is, right? So, for example, I had a crossbow before that was 45 level requirement. That's where I started. Coincidentally, Free Dragons is also 45, so that is the least you have to wait. But if your crossbow is like 60, then you start at 60 or 55. You can't really be that choosy with crossbows because they can be quite expensive if you want to be too fancy about it. Another reason why you don't want to go crossbows early is because they feel awful without some good reload speed, which means you're not going to get there anytime soon. You're all the way over here. Same with the crossbow cluster, so just forget about it. Go bows. For bows, you can pick up all the projectile damage early. You can pick up harness the elements. You can pick up probably stand and deliver is a good one for enemies that are next to you, or if you're more of somebody who's taking their distance, you can go death from afar. Everything that matters early is increased damage. However you can get it. Attack damage, projectile damage. Pick it all up. Get your action speed, get your movement speed, and path over to pierce the heart, whatever you want. All of the bow nodes are very strong. Don't go for crit. Crit is a complete bait on this build, and mostly in general. And yeah, that's what you can do. You can also grab Falcon Technique, which is not that great early, but it will make attributes a lot easier. And after that, you can slowly but surely try and transition, go over here, and somewhere around level 45 to level 60, you're going to be able to respec. Once again, full leveling guide coming. Now, at level 22, you get access to Gas Arrow, which is actually, for leveling, in my opinion, just straight up stronger than Lightning Arrow, Lightning Rod. It tempers down a little bit later again, but personally, I would do the switch if you know what to do. Basically, use Gas Arrow, and then you use, where is it again? Flame Wall to ignite those gas explosions. And you don't need to level the Flame Wall, right? It's not going to take as much int as you think it is. You just leave it at level 1 or as low level as you can. And that's going to be your combo. You're going to absolutely shred through packs, shred through bosses. It's going to be great. You just upgrade your bow over and over again. But in general, this transition can be hard, especially for newer players. If you already have leveling gear, trust me, if this is your second character, third character, and you have like, I don't know, 10 exalts on the side, and you can buy some leveling bows at certain levels, 10, I don't know, 25, and so on, then you're going to have such an easy time. It is an absolute breeze. It is not like the first playthrough. Just trust me on that. And I would personally invest into leveling items if I was you. You can always sell them later again because people always need leveling items. And even if not, the faster you get through, the faster you get to end game, the faster you get to farming again. But yeah, other than that, I'm going to quickly show you a map. I'm going to do, I don't know, Hidden Grotto. We're just going to do this rare map right here. Basically, the build is awesome. It has been fantastic for me so far. I don't know what else to say. Like, this is the build I want to min-max. This is the build I'm going to take to like 90 plus. And is going to be the build that I want to farm up with forever. So this is what happens. I'm just going to quickly show you this again. You already saw it in the intro, but I'm pretty sure you're here for the pretty explosions, which I'm here for as well. I know I said I don't want to make Fury 2 into Fury 1, but come on, if you give me tools like this, what am I supposed to do? Come on, like, look at this. Look at the absolute mayhem of these explosions. So yeah, if you don't want to play crossbows, if you still think bows are just superior, that's all good. But I think you'll be pretty surprised what you're going to see from this build in the next few coming days. And I will keep you guys up to date. I don't think there's a boss in this map, but yeah, just watch the intro if you don't know how the rotation works. In general, it is quite important that you know what's going on. Also, I guess an interesting fact is if your damage absolutely sucks, if you have really bad gear or you just don't know what you're doing, then what you can do is, for example, saw this rare right here. If that survives and has still full HP, but it's shocked, just swap to, like, it's not, You can also do it at rares. If you really need to, just do it at rares as well. Just make sure they're shocked, and it's gonna be fine. You're gonna get the upgrades, you're gonna get the exalts to get a better crossbow. Like I said, crossbow is everything. If your crossbow sucks, there's just nothing else you can do. Also, upgrade your gems constantly, right? All the good stuff. Get your supports gems in. Lesser jeweler orbs right now are so cheap. You can 4-link all your stuff for like 1 exalt. It's quite a joke, yeah. As you can see right here, sometimes I get hit, but that is very rare, and usually I don't get hit twice in a row. Bosses are actually the easiest content for this, because as you saw, they're just insta-frozen, and they can't even react. So if you die, maybe it's to something random in maps. Like I said, I'm only progressing. I'm sure in red maps it's going to be a lot harder. We're going to do some workarounds there. We're going to probably spec a little bit more into defenses, but yeah. This is the build. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm really happy that I found kind of my groove here. This is going to be the build that I'm going to take to endgame. Please no nerfs. Thank you very much. Totally fine build. Not nerfable at all. I mean, it's just 2 skills. I'm combining 2 skills and 1 unique. That cannot be, like, don't send the GGG police, okay? Just let me have some fun. And yeah, full guides, updates. You can expect basically everything. Start leveling your rangers if you already have a ranger. Try it out, see if you like it, get a good crossbow, and yeah. Because I still don't have a slogan. See you next time.